Today we're going to be talking about one of the best ways to travel with your food while you're out there overlanding and camping. What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. Today I've got a brand new piece of gear to review for you guys, and it kind of all started with this one over here, which you may have caught just a little while back. We are talking about powered coolers and refrigerators for cars and vehicles when you're out there camping and overlanding. And this guy right here, you can check out my full review of right up here in the corner. This is the ICECO APL35, and I had some really good impressions with this refrigerator. The build quality, the features, everything about this thing really is right up my alley. My only real downside was the size and weight of this guy. The APL55 is a little bit too big for me just traveling around by myself, but if you're out there with a bunch of friends, then having a huge refrigerator like this really goes a long way. This thing is dual zone, so you can split it as a fridge and freezer, and I really like this fridge and I wanted to use it, but I really needed something smaller and lighter. So that brings us to the new piece that we're looking at over here. This is a brand new product that ICECO sent out to me for this review. That being said though, everything here are my own thoughts and impressions. I've been testing this guy out for about the past month or so. You've probably seen it in passing in some of my recent videos, and they are available right now. So I figured this was the perfect time to actually give you guys my full thoughts on this new product, which is the ICECO APL35. Now, before we take a detailed look, let's just simply compare the sizes. Obviously, the 35 is much smaller than the 55, and it's also quite a lot lighter too. So it's basically taking a lot of the things that I loved about the APL55 and shrinking them down into a size that is much more suitable for me. I would say this is about the sweet spot for most people. If you're traveling around by yourself or maybe two people, you could probably make it work with food in here for 4 people if you pack it really tight. But overall, I believe the 35 liter mark is probably going to be the best for me and most people out there, unless you got a family of 4. Now, ICECO took a lot of the really nice features of the 55 and just kind of made them a little bit smaller into the 35. So let's take a look at how this thing compares. First and foremost, we still have that sleek and robust build design of these things. The 35 was actually inspired by another fridge, the APL20, which I have not personally tested myself, but it comes with a corrosion-resistant all-aluminum design. This is going to make the fridge very durable for bouncing around in the back of your vehicle, and it's also going to give it some weatherproof performance in basically any environment. Now, I say weatherproof, but not waterproof, of course. This thing probably would be fine sitting outside in some light rain, but you do have these nice grills here to keep water out, and you do have some electrical components over on the side, so it's just something to keep in mind. I think this thing would probably have no problem in like a little bit of a rainstorm, but I definitely wouldn't want to just sit this thing out in really bad weather all the time. To go along with the build quality, we have these really nice reinforced corners on here, and I've been trying to keep this thing as nice as possible before I actually give you guys this review. So this fridge has actually been living in the back seat of my truck, which is perfect. The APL55, it might be able to fit in the back seat of the Tundra, but it would take up quite a lot more room than the 35. And like I keep saying, this is about the perfect size for me. So going forward in the future, this will probably be my go-to fridge for at least the rest of the summer until maybe ICECO comes out with something with a few more changes, which we'll get into in a second. There are really nice grab handles on each side, which makes moving this thing around pretty easy, and this thing is actually loaded up with gear right now. I've got batteries sitting on top of it, and you can still tell that this thing is fairly lightweight, especially when comparing it to the APL55. There are rubber feet on the bottom of it as well, so this thing will not slide around if it is sitting in the bed of your truck. And going forward, as I'm traveling around, I generally have room in my back seat, but for my last trip, I just did a quick overnighter with my buddy Mike. This thing was living in the bed of my truck, and I just strapped it down over the top, and luckily it's really not all that scratched up. I think the build quality of this thing is really going to hold up, and I can report back to you guys on that in the future. Now, the APL35, just like the 55, is also highly efficient. This thing is equipped with one of their top tier nano compressors, very similar to the one in the 55. This compressor is also from their SECOP, I believe is how you pronounce it, the SECOP collection, and it is the small smallest, lightest, and most efficient compressor in that collection. ICECO says on the website that this thing delivers very efficient cooling, and I can attest to that so far. Generally, with some other fridges that I was testing out in the past, especially when they were packed out and I was about to leave to go on a trip, I would actually cool the fridge down first off of AC power just at my house here in my garage. That way the fridge is already cool when I plug it into a battery source while we're on the road. I actually loaded this thing up and the fridge was sitting at about 65, 70 degrees, and as soon as I plug this into a power source, it cools down very, very quickly, and it seems to be very efficient at the same time. Now, speaking of how you can actually power this thing, there are a few different options. Of course, you can just plug it into the wall of your garage using an AC power outlet, but most of the time you're going to be on the road. So I have two different options here. This is a new one to me, and I actually have not used it. I will explain why in a little bit, but this is the ICECO PB1000. So this is more of a standard power battery bank. Some things that you guys may have seen me review here in the past. It has a lot of nice features. It's got solar input right here, which would be compatible with their ICECO solar panel. You guys may have seen this in my review of the 55. It also has a car socket and two DC outputs, which is very nice to have. That would actually work pretty well in my Kimbo camper because it uses smaller DC connections like that. We've got a bunch of USB ports, USB-C and regular USB-A, and then two AC outlets right here. It's got a light on the back. It's got a really nice screen here if we power this thing up. It shows you everything that you need to know about the unit itself. And there's also an eco mode if you need to charge this thing a little bit slower, because if you plug this thing into an AC outlet, you are pumping power into it. I just charged this thing from about 10% all the way up to 99% in about an hour. Now, for the reason that I haven't been using this thing, I like to travel with my fridge, of course, in the truck somewhere, whether it's in the bed or in the back seat. And ideally, I would like to just plug this fridge right into one of my AC outlets or a 12-volt outlet in the truck. That way, as I'm driving, this thing is charging up. The APL35 and the 55 do not have onboard batteries, so you do actually have to have it plugged into a battery source that will continue to run when the truck is off. I don't have a second battery system in this vehicle, so I needed to bring something like one of these batteries here. The reason I was not bringing the PB1000 on my trip is because even on the eco mode, it draws too much power for the inverter inside of my Tundra. So it will start to charge and then it will cut off, start to charge again and cut off. So I would not actually be able to put power back into this thing unless I had it connected to solar, couldn't use my AC outlets. So I resorted back to the one that I was using with the APL55. And this little ICECO power pack works really, really well. I'm actually going to unplug this for a second because one of the things that I really liked about it, at least when I was using it with the 55, is that you can use the magnets in it and you can actually connect it to the side of the APL55, which is a really nice touch. It keeps everything nice and sleek. You can run the power right into here, and then as long as your cable management is nice, you can just move this thing around and it has power all the time. This thing is not as power aggressive when you are actually charging it up, so I was able to charge this with the inverter in my truck as well as camera batteries and everything else that I need to charge. And this thing stayed powered the entire trip. I would say while the fridge is cool and this thing is at 100% after a long drive, it would definitely last overnight. It would probably last around 24, maybe up to like 30 hours before it would completely die. And that depends on a lot of factors too. How hot is it in your vehicle? How much food do you actually have in here? Are you going in and opening the lid a bunch of times? A power source about this big worked perfectly for me, so that is the reason why I was traveling around with the 35 and this smaller power pack. Now, to get power to the fridge, all you do is plug in the little car socket like that and you are good to go. Now let's take a look inside the APL35 because it has a feature that fridges this size generally don't have. This is a true dual zone unit, which means you can actually have this thing running as a fridge on both sides, or you can turn one side down to act as a freezer. I generally don't use a freezer function while I'm out camping because I'm constantly stocking and then removing food from this fridge. So about every like 2 or 3 days while I'm on the road, I'm actually putting new food in here. So for most of my trip, I was actually running both sides as a refrigerator. Now the lid on the 35 is actually pretty similar to the 55. This fridge, if you watch the video on it, it has a soft close feature. This one has kind of a lid stay design. So no matter where you open this lid up, it's going to actually stay in place, which is really nice because oftentimes the fridge is sitting up really high and it's kind of hard to reach inside of it. So no matter where you stop that lid, it's going to stay. And then when you close it, we got some simple aluminum latches on here to keep that thing nice and sealed. This fridge also has Bluetooth app control, a 5-year warranty on the compressor with some local US customer service representatives. It has really strong insulation and a thick door seal to prevent cold air from escaping. And it has a cooling range from 68 degrees Fahrenheit all the way down to -4 degrees Fahrenheit. Now this fridge has actually been running this entire time, and as you can tell, you probably can't hear it. We got a lot of background noise around here, but I'm gonna bring my mic really close down here to the compressor. You may be able to hear the fan running a little bit. You can hear a little bit of trickling from the compressor, but I had this thing in the back of my truck and I did not notice it the entire time we were on the road. Now the screen over here for you guys is going to be a little bit difficult to see right now because it is bright out here. I do wish that this screen was maybe like a matte material, that way it didn't reflect so much light, but as long as it's not blaring sun right on this thing, you can still see it fairly easily. The user interface on it is really simple. Once you get this thing plugged into a power source, like my little power pack right here from ICECO, it's a simple press of the power button to turn it on, and then you have a settings icon right here. So when I press that, one of the sides will start blinking. You have the main side and then the freezer side. If I want to adjust the temperature of it, while it is blinking, I simply click minus or plus to change the temperature. If I want to adjust the other side, another press will move it over there. You can go up and down with the temperature over there. And then when you are done, you just simply walk away from it and your settings will be saved. They do also have a USB-A port down here, so if you need to like charge your phone or something, you could do that, but keep in mind that that is going to be taking power from the source that it is plugged into. We do have vents on both sides of the unit to keep that compressor in there working properly. And let's actually see what I have in here right now. 35 liter for me is a ton of space. I've got a full gallon of water in here. I've got a ton of cans. This is basically set up in like a party mode right now, so I ate all of the food out of here. I was using the freezer side, which is fairly deep as well. Here is a 16-ounce can, and you can actually fit them standing up inside of the freezer. And let's actually see how many we can fit across. We got 1, 2, 3. You've got about 3.5 16-ounce cans that can fit lengthwise in here. Let's check out some of these slim cans here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, easily no problem. And then 1, 2, 3 across. So you could fit 12 taller cans like this on just the freezer side. Now up here on the lid, we have some information about the unit itself. They actually have a pretty useful thing right here showing you the degrees to keep your temperature at depending on what you have inside of the fridge. Just below that, we have a sheet for error codes. That way, if you ever run into any errors with this thing, you can reference the screen on the side and it will basically tell you exactly what is going on with it. I have had no issues with this fridge so far, and if that changes in the future, of course, I'll let you guys know in a video. I think this is a really good option for most people out there, especially if you don't want to have something as big as the APL35. It's large and heavy. This thing is lightweight and a lot smaller, making it fairly easy to move around. Now, all of that being said, let's talk about some things where I feel like ICECO could improve on a unit like this. First up, let's go back to the discussion of this battery. Most people are probably traveling around and charging batteries in their vehicle. Most vehicles won't put out enough power to charge one of those really big battery packs, so you're probably going to have to opt for a smaller one like this, which is fine. But in the future, I think a way that they could improve this fridge is to actually incorporate a battery pack like this into the unit itself. I'm sure they're using a ton of space in here already, so for this specific unit, you probably couldn't fit a battery this size in there. But I would really like to see a fridge roughly this size and weight with an internal battery. That way I can just plug this directly into my AC outlet or a 12-volt outlet inside of my vehicle. While I'm driving around, this will charge it back up to 100%, and then when I turn the vehicle off at my campsite, it will have enough power to last. I would say sweet spot would be like 24 hours while it's running, maybe 48 hours if you could cram enough batteries in there. I would really like to see ICECO come out with a fridge with a battery pack already in there, or a hot swappable battery. If this thing could kind of click into the side and then I could pull it out and put a different one in, kind of like a drill battery, I think that would be a great improvement to their fridge lineup. Cons. I really can't think of many cons. This aluminum might not be for everyone. I think over time it probably would get kind of scratched up and patinaed, but I think that's kind of cool. They also have accessories for these refrigerators like slide out, which I of course do not use, but they also have a cover for this fridge too, which would keep it nice and protected, but also it might add a little bit more insulation value, which honestly I don't think this fridge needs. It has thick walls and this really nice seal already, so that's why I haven't been using some of those accessories with this fridge. The screen I think could be a little bit easier to read in some bright sunlight, maybe like a matte screen on there, maybe something a little bit tilted. But I'm really just like grasping at straws here. I do actually like the way they angled the power cable on here so it comes out of the side rather than going out the bottom. It would be a very big oversight if the plug came out and then was sitting lower than the fridge, so they did a good job there. One of the cons that I mentioned about the APL35 was actually the Bluetooth connected app. It was called Car Fridge, I believe. So ICECO has actually improved the app. It's called the ICECO app now, and you can connect all of your ICECO products to that. I still think the app needs a little bit more improvement. I find myself using this over here a lot more because sometimes the settings I noticed would get a little bit messed up if I was changing the temperatures while I was driving. One time I changed the freezer side to be a freezer and it actually like hyper cooled. It got all the way down to -4 degrees Fahrenheit and I just wanted it to be at about 0. But as long as I was adjusting the temperature with the side panel over here, then everything was fine. So the app may be a little bit buggy, but I'm sure that is something that will be really easy to improve on in the future. I really can't think of any more cons of this thing. Like I said, I've really been enjoying it over the past like month or so that I've been testing it, and this is now going to be my go-to fridge for all of my adventures in the truck. I would like to bring a big behemoth like this every once in a while if we are camping with a ton of people and I would just want to pack this thing with a bunch of food and a lot of drinks. But that's kind of a rare use case for me. The APL35 fits into my lifestyle and how I like to travel pretty perfectly at this point, and I don't think anything will change that until maybe ICECO comes out with something with an integrated battery. If I could throw this thing in the back of my truck, plug it in, and just kind of forget about it, that would be ideal. So I believe that's all that I had for this quick review. If you guys have any questions on the new APL35 or even the APL55, let me know in the comments down below. I'll try to answer anything as best as possible. Huge thank you to ICECO for sending these out for review. There is an Indiegogo campaign for the APL35 which released on June 1st, so you guys might be a little bit late, but you can check that out at the link in the description down below. Stay tuned for some future videos if you want to see this thing being used around the campsite. And if you are new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe because I make new videos every single week. As always, thank you all for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.